What's up, guys? It's your favorite QB coach, and welcome to part 3 of Ryo Ishikawa's Swing Analysis. So if you guys haven't watched part 1 and part 2, go check them out. We highlighted in part 1 basically some take-home points with his backswing that you guys should use and utilize in your game. Part 2, we started getting into some of the reasons why on his downswing we might be getting a little bit out of positions and definitely struggling. Now this last part basically is going to elaborate a little bit more on part 2. That really got him messed up, right? So let's kind of go into the driver and look at this, but we'll get back to the setup because, again, guys, this is going to be a #1 thing that I think we're going to recommend for Ryo, is making sure that his armpits are a little bit more on this line. So he's basically getting a little bit taller right here to make sure that he's a little bit more back on the line. We'll come back to that though. So anyways, we got line drive and Ryo over here on the right of your screen. So first things first, what they probably changed was they got him to go a little bit more of a tiger pivot, right? They like to teach a bump in Japan, so to match up a bump, you better be moving your sternum off the golf ball a decent amount, right? So what they taught him basically was to go into front bend with rotation, move your head off the ball a decent amount, move your sternum off the ball, get a little bit more width so you can bump forward and get more power, right? That's the idea. So anyways, you can see, as we can see, sternum's moving off the golf ball. He's pretty much in a good, he looks like Tiger in 2000. He's in a good position, right? So what he's doing good is, notice how his pelvis is not dipped yet, right? So his lead side pelvis is not lower than the right. That's a good sign here, right? So that's a pretty powerful pivot, I would say. Now I'd ideally like to see a little bit more of a centered pivot, have him set up with the tilt, and then basically you can think about it as turning around it, even though you technically move off it, then you move a little bit forward, and then a centered pivot's never actually staying completely centered. It is moving around. It just overall is centered. That's what you kind of got to get. It's a little bit kind of complicated, but so anyways, from here you can see that he's getting that nice little pressure shift into the lead side, which is great. This pelvis is starting to lower, which is great. This knee right here, we're gonna watch as it starts going into external rotation, which is great. All the natural good moves that a great player does that he had in his old swing, he's keeping some of it, right, which is great. Now what I don't like is, notice this knee. So this knee starts working in internal rotation very, very early, almost from the start, right? So most good drivers nowadays have a little bit of external rotation before it kicks in. His just is immediately pretty much kicking in internal, and once the hands are level to hips, he's definitely kicked this in internal rotation, right? Which is basically the knee looking a little bit like this. Now the reason why we don't like that is because that's getting the hip bone to go and move this way, which basically means there's a whole little ball and socket on the hip bone. When that ball goes up towards the top of the socket, it locks in place if pressure is continuously pushed that way, which i.e. is the bump and extending. And basically from there, the mid-spine, the thoracic can't rotate when that is locked in place, right? Now it also has to do a little bit with lordosis as well, right? So whenever you get this motion where that kicks internal and this raises, that pushes you out of lordosis, your natural tilt in that spine, straightens it out a little bit, which also makes the mid-spine not be able to rotate and puts a lot of pressure on the lumbar spine, which is really bad for your, basically, if you want to be injury free, that's really bad. So anyways, from here, there's a little stall out, but luckily for Ryo, he does what all great players does. He has a nice little supination and flexion move, and he gets a pretty stable RLC, or rate of closure, through that impact zone, I would argue, and then goes from there. So when he's playing good, he probably plays a nice little, probably like a 15-yard draw with the driver, maybe like more so like a 7-yard draw, which is totally fine, right? But when he's off and not controlling that club face, that's when he starts getting the crazy ones, right? So what I would like to see is, when he's off, I would rather him be off and having more of a neutral path than a very far in to out path, or even a very far out to in path, right? That's why we don't like players swinging too far one way or the other, right? Because then you really got to start, if you're off with the club face, let's say you swing 7 degrees to the left, but subconsciously your brain knows the target's there and your club face is pointing at that target, you're getting a huge slice, right? So that's kind of why we'd rather see it a little bit more of a neutral path. That way, most people try to have the club face pointing relatively around target. And if you start swinging too far the other way, unless you're consciously thinking about it and you know of it, you're most likely not going to match up that face to where you're swinging, right? You'd have to have a lot of time on a track, man, and you would have to train your brain to be able to do that. That would be something most players aren't going to do that, right? So anyways, with Ryo, to neutral out his path, let's go back to the down the line view. First things first, like we just said a little bit earlier, let's get his armpits a little bit more on this line, right? So we're gonna get him standing a little bit taller with the chest, right? That doesn't mean the knees are gonna extend. We're just gonna get the chest to extend ever so slightly. Now from there, I'm not gonna really mess with his backswing. I ideally would like to see a center pivot, but it's okay for him to move off the ball. We're not gonna really get into that. The main thing we're gonna work on for him is let's get this knee not working so far into internal rotation as early. So basically right around here when the hands are level to hips, we're gonna see the middle of the kneecap would be at the middle of this circle to maybe ever so slightly right of middle. That's gonna get his pelvis line basically not as much of the lead side above the right, and it's going to be a little bit more level to even a little bit more down at this point. And then from here, we're going to talk a lot about getting his axis of the median of the cap basically to rotate. Notice how this is pointing pretty much down here, right? Down there, down there, down there, and now it starts to rotate. I would ideally like pretty much at this position, I like most people's median of the cap to be pointing like right here at this position. So his head releasing a little bit earlier. So that's number 2 or number 3, right? So setup, internal rotation of the knee, making sure it's a little bit more external in transition, and then it can work internal. Number 3 is making sure that the median of the cap is releasing. And then from there, I think number 4 is gonna happen naturally. Notice how right before impact, if we draw a line from the hip bone straight down, notice how it's pretty much almost on the outside part of the foot. Well, I would ideally, instead of the tailbone continuously moving forward and extending, so his tailbone is going forward, 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 extend. I would like to see it go lower, forward, forward, start rotating and working backwards, and then push forward a little bit more, right? Once it's kind of gotten around, then it can push forward and up. That would be the difference, right? And that's gonna get him basically at this position, the tailbone, instead of it being right here, the tailbone's going to be kind of where his groin is right now, and it's going to be a little bit more that way, and that's going to allow him to basically rotate a little bit more efficiently. It's also going to be the biggest factor in making sure that he's neutraling out that path, not swinging so far to the right. Alright guys, so I know that was a lot of stuff to digest. Watch this video through a few times because there's so many players out there, especially the Japanese audience that will be watching this later, of you guys who bump like this and bump incorrectly, right? It's okay to bump, just make sure that you're not kicking that knee internal so quick. Make sure that you're getting, as you're bumping, you're also making sure that you're rotating, letting the head median of the cap rotate, and also getting that stern tailbone, instead of it moving continuously forward, having a little bit of a backwards movement and then a push. That's greatly going to help your ability to stabilize out your path. You're not going to swing so far right, you're going to have better control of the face, a lot of great things. Alright guys, so that was the last part to Ryo Ishikawa's swing analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of analysis. Leave a comment down below, let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Smash that like button as always, and please, please, please hit that red subscribe button. Alright guys, hope you guys have a good one and play some good golf out there.